The extent of the consequences of flooding for a car depends on several factors. In particular, it depends on how deep and how long the car was in the water, whether the engine was running during the flooding, and how much electronics was on board. Attention! If the car was underwater for several tens of minutes, then its fate was virtually sealed. Its place is on scrap metal. This amount of time is enough for water, along with silt, sand, dirt, to get into all the nooks and crannies. Old and structurally simple cars, theoretically, could still be saved, but due to their low cost, this is completely unprofitable. Each part must be disassembled, washed, dried and preserved. This applies not only to interior decoration, fittings and upholstery materials. The same should be done with the gearbox and rear axle. Modern cars, stuffed with electronics, are almost impossible to return to full life. Of course, there will be workshops that will agree to restore the vehicle. The only trouble is that only obvious faults can be eliminated. Additional damage should be expected if the vehicle is flooded while driving. If a running engine swallows water, then you can't get rid of it by drying it out. Most likely it will need a major overhaul. Restoring a car only makes sense if it was partially flooded and the contact with water did not last long. The main thing in such a situation is to dry out as quickly as possible. Minutes of delay will be very costly. Attention! Most insurance policies provide compensation for damage caused by flooding, but only if it could not have been avoided. If the insurer proves that the driver continued driving despite the fact that the road was flooded, he will have the right to refuse to pay compensation. Unfortunately, no casco accepts bravado and carelessness. Drying should not be delayed, because fungi and mold will instantly spread inside a wet car. Some items, such as soundproofing mats or cladding, may not be suitable for reuse. All upholstery elements that can be removed should be removed. In case of severe flooding, use dehumidifiers or fans, which can be purchased at hardware stores. I have good news for you. Now, if you are planning to buy a used car, or learn more about your car, you no longer need to search for the information you need on the internet. We have collected everything in one place for you, on the website carme.pro. Here you can find out everything about the car, what breaks and at what mileage, any problems with engines, chassis or gearboxes, which trim levels are better not to mess with and how not to lose money buying a used car. You will learn all this on carme.pro. Before you undertake a renovation, you should calculate its profitability. If, as a result of the flooding of a young car, the engine, electrics, and the interior have become limp, then it's time to send the remains to a landfill. However, many victims try to hide traces of the flood and sell the car, keeping silent about the unfortunate past. In theory, this allows losses to be minimized. However, in reality, it is impossible to hide traces of flooding. Having learned the truth, the new owner has the right to accuse the seller of fraud and demand compensation for losses through the court. Bad news for owners of modern cars. Once completely submerged in water, most of them can never be recovered. This applies in particular to vehicles equipped with a CAN bus that connects numerous control modules for individual components. Correct operation of the electronics is only possible when all elements are working correctly, which cannot be guaranteed after a flood. If someone undertakes a complete restoration of the car and checking all modules, then it should be understood that this is a gigantic amount of work. And this does not take into account the cost of choked components. Attention! If the machine operates normally after drying, this does not mean that there are no problems. Problems with electronics appear after several weeks or even several months. If the car has been flooded, make sure there is no water in the engine before starting it. Remember, water, unlike air, is not compressible. If it gets into the cylinders, the engine will be destroyed, the connecting rods will be bent and the cylinder head will be damaged. If even traces of moisture are visible in the intake system, the engine must be prepared for starting by a professional service center. Water can also damage the transmission. Dishonest traders carefully hide the true history of the sunken car. And among the advertisements, such a car attracts with its low price and good appearance. First of all, you should check to see if there is an unpleasant odor in the car. Moisture promotes the immediate growth of mold, which is the source of the stench. Sellers are trying to cover up the smell with strong fragrances. It is necessary to check the condition and smell of the covering under the rugs. After flooding, white traces of mold often appear there. The surest way to check is to remove the door trim. If the car was flooded, signs of submersion, dirt, sand, or even a clear boundary of the depth of flooding, will be visible on the inside. True, it is unlikely that the seller will allow you to remove the upholstery. In addition, you should pay attention to the smooth operation of the engine at idle. This is the most common symptom in a car that has been subjected to deep water treatments. In the case of gasoline engines, this may be caused by an electronic reaction to the obstruction of the catalyst, which was previously filled with water. In the case of a diesel engine, by analogy, it can be assumed that the particulate filter is clogged after water and dirt enter it. You can find out about the fact of flooding by unfastening the contact connector of the electrical harness located inside the passenger compartment, if there is access. The presence of corrosion on the contacts should alert you. However, it is not worth judging the underwater past by only one criterion. However, if you find several symptoms, then it is better to refrain from purchasing. Even if the price of the car is extremely tempting. Problems and repair costs are inevitable in the future.